Hello and thanks for watching my video. Welcome to Mikei Talk, and today I am here with Jiggy Joe, so welcome Joe.
How goes it?
And today we're going to be talking about several topics that are fairly popular or, sort of causing a little bit of issues in the community right now. So we're actually going to be talking about several different things. We're going to be talking about items in the gem store and the effect that they're having. We're also going to be talking about the ArenaNet's PR and the way they're handling and releasing information. And we're also going to be talking about lore to do with the raid, which is why you see we're here in Stronghold of the Faithful in Raid Wing 3. Because I know a lot of people have asked me to do a summary of the lore of the wings of the raids. So we're going to be doing that at the end of the video. So don't worry, there's no spoilers until then. So let's start off by talking about the gem store. Now, I'm actually going to come out of this. I always like to have this particular image, like a standard image that you guys can just listen to. But I'm actually going to go, and today I'm actually going to open it up, and if I can actually do this. There we go. And we're actually going to look at the gem store. Now, why am I asking you guys to, or why do you want to hear about the gem store? The reason being is because there's a lot of items coming into the gem store. There's lots of promotions, new items, and lots of things going on. I mean, if you could see just some of the stuff I've actually bought, like Chaos Glove skin, that was what I bought. I bought character slots because I'm a bit of an autoholic. But for me, I had to buy the Chaos Glove skin because I'm a Guild Wars 1 fan and I had those. Or actually, I never had those. That was one thing I never got. And so I was able to buy them with gems in Guild Wars 2. But what is it that, why are people upset about this? It's because there are skins coming into the game, and people feel that a lot of the problem with Heart of Thorns was the lack of skins that came in. There was very few armor sets, but we get lots of gem store items come in every week. Just look, if we go, I'm going to click on style. I mean, there's Quaggan backpacks that are on sale. Obviously, when you guys watching this video, this may change. But new things that have come in, like the White Mantle Appearance Pack, that's a new outfit. And it's not armor, it's outfits. So you can't multi-match, mix and match with other different armor sets. Zera's Mask, here's an interesting one. This is a raid type item, because Zera's to do with Raid Wing 3. And yet you can buy this face mask on the gem store. You've got backpacks, you've got glider skins. My god, how many glider skins do we have? Like the macaw wings, the hawk wings, moth wings, so many different things. Did you buy you didn't buy the sloth backpack, did you, Joe?
No, anything that has to do with the raid, in terms of like appearance, I just refuse to buy.
But again, that's something that you can buy. There's lots of different things that, again, like all these like wing backpacks, butterfly wings, daydreamer wings, etc., etc., that have come out and have been released into the game. Now, a lot of people have been saying that, is this a good thing? They are getting kind of fed up with all these items on the gem store. Now, me and Joe are going to take differing opinions on this, and this is because, we want to give a fair and balanced argument for this. So, Joe, tell me, what is the issue with ArenaNet creating, the new designs, new things that people may want? Maybe people suggesting, I'd like to see this on my character, them designing it and putting it in the gem store rather than by making it a reward from a particular thing that they have to do.
Well, I mean, you can look at it from multiple perspectives. Mostly, when I'm thinking of like from the business standpoint, that's a pretty big one. Like they need to make some kind of income, considering like once people buy the main game, then where are they supposed to get that income from? And also the fact that it's become much more free to play because they released the game free to play. I wouldn't say recently. It's been like almost half a year now. But however, you can kind of see them sifted into that like free to play mindset. Release less of the main store content that probably a good chunk of their community is unable to access, and release gem store stuff. Stuff that they can swipe their credit card and get instantly.
Okay, yeah, but why is this? You're trying to take the argument. Why is this a good thing? For me, I'm going to say, why is this a bad thing in terms, from a customer's point of view or from a player's point of view, you're a player, you've played since launch, or you were one of the head start people, I think. And, are you happy that you're seeing all these different skins in a environment where you actually have to pay? If you want it, generally you can buy it with in-game gold by converting them to gems, but it's far easier just to convert your cash into gems itself. Do you think it's just a cash grab?
Yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I think they're really just taking advantage of the fact that gliders are new and that there are new variations of skins and weapons in the game that they can, that they're able to just toss at a store and have people buy because they don't have the time to actually, grind out the ways to actually get it. It's like I was saying before, it's because they're able to swipe their credit card and just get it instantly instead of, working hard for it and actually wearing it as like a trophy or a reward like it should be. But I don't think it's good at all, not even remotely. Considering the fact that they've only released literally a handful of new skins, or I'm sorry, not skins, armor sets in general, since Heart of Thorns in general, and it's not something that's good to see in general, especially for new content to be released. It's like, if, for instance, they release a new expansion pack, I don't want to get that expansion pack if I'm only promised like 3 or 4 new armor sets and like a handful of weapons. Like it just doesn't interest me. Like, one of the things that really got me excited about Heart of Thorns was discovering all of this new loot to find, the armor sets and stuff, and then finding out that you had to actually, the only way to get these armor sets is really to like grind it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it really turned me off. Like, I got one armor set fully completed, and I just was like, that's enough for me. I don't need those other armor sets. I don't want to support that.
Yeah. But all right, then let me take it from the other side of you. You're from ArenaNet, and the Guild Wars 2 is a pay-to-play in terms of you don't pay a subscription fee, you just buy the actual game, and that's it. And that's a fine business model, but Guild Wars 2 is known for having fantastic cosmetics and different fashion sense. Why is it that not right then from a design point of view? You've got designers, okay, that generally will do most of their work at the beginning of an expansion because they will design all the features, and then once it's done, it's handed over to the developers to actually do the mechanics, and then actually put them in game and make sure they test it and it's all okay, that the mechanics actually work. From a designer point of view, you will actually have done a lot of your work already. They can't just say, all right, as a employee, you've done your job and now you've got nothing to do. Well, okay, you can just sit around and do nothing. They are a designer. They get paid to design, and they could develop items that they could possibly put in game. But it's also from a monetarily point of view, they can say, well, look, you bought the game, you got the game. We released in a certain amount of items we wanted to do, and that's what we did. Now, as the game's being developed, we could release nothing at all. We could give you no new skins until the next expansion, or we could create new interesting designs, something that we feel some of the player base may be interested in. We're going to put it on the gem store so you can buy it, but if you want to really buy it, you could probably if you spend a little bit of money just to get that skin. But for ArenaNet, it's going to keep the money ticking over, and because they're a business at the end of the day, and they have to keep earning money because they can't get their money through subscriptions, like certain other MMOs out there do. And at the end of the day, say as a player, perhaps if I think back to Guild Wars 1, say I wanted to see Obsidian armor in the game. Joe, did you get Obsidian armor in Guild Wars 1?
Yeah, I did, and it took me actually quite a bit too, and I was really proud of it when I actually got it all.
Okay, and so in like a sort of, say I email ArenaNet and say, well, look, I had Obsidian armor on my Elementalist in Guild Wars 1. I would really love to get that skin in Guild Wars 2. And is it possible, I had the Chaos weapons in Guild Wars 1, and I've got the Chaos weapons in Guild Wars 2. I'd like to have the same armor as I did. Is it possible to get it in some form? Well, ArenaNet, okay, they think, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, let's design it. And, we could put it in as a way to acquire this armor, but obviously that requires a lot of time. They don't have the other staff to create a collection that you might need to get. And so they say, well, look, people want this. We could give it to them now, or we could give it to them in 9 to 12 months. What would you rather have? And if we give it to you now, all you have to do is pay some gems and you get it. And it's a nice armor set, and it makes your character look cool, and it's something that you might want. Not everybody in the game will want that armor, but you may personally want that, and you can get that just by buying some gems. Is that a bad thing?
I would say yes. I mean, there's ways that they could go about giving players like you the armor sets that they want. Like, for instance, if you've obtained that armor in Guild Wars 1, similar to how they implemented the Hall of Monuments, you could somehow import that armor into the game. Carry on that that legend that you did. The cool stuff that you did. Into the Guild Wars 2 community, into the game. And show people, I spent all this time in Guild Wars 1. This is the cool stuff that I have. And you can actually you can do that without having to pay the money for it. And
But again,
I think that's what they should do.
But again, Joe, that's going to take time, and ArenaNet don't have, well, saying that they don't have the resources to do that. So surely it's better to get it in game where people can be happy and actually run around and play their character in the skin that they actually may want, and rather than be waiting for a skin that may never come, for a collection that eventually they may have to grind to be able to get their item.
Well, maybe so, but at the same time, I think that it's a little bit more beneficial to play the consumer side opposed to the big businessman. Look at it from what can we do to make the consumers happy opposed to make it $1. And at the end of the day, I think that would be an easy way to get around it. And it would make people happy, and it would make those who didn't have the chance to get that armor or those weapons in Guild Wars 1 to actually be like, hey, maybe I should try and get that stuff in Guild Wars 1 and, try and, make it look cool in Guild Wars 2. And I think that... Sorry, you can go if you want.
I was just going to say, I can appreciate the viewpoint that you're going with, but again, I would say that the effort demanded that it takes to actually create something like a collection so that the armor is actually earned correctly, for better words. But again, I'm talking about one armor set. So imagine how much work, I don't really want to go into the debacle of the legendary weapons, but you're talking a lot of effort to come up with a collection, to all the design, the software programming, to make sure that you get the collection and you get this armor piece. And, again, these armor pieces, there's 6 armor pieces, there's 5 races, there's 3 different, 3 types of armor, light, medium, and heavy. That's a lot of different armor pieces that they have to design. So what I'm saying is it's very easy for them to say, all right, you can buy it on the gem store, because then not only do you unlock it straight away, whereas maybe if we look at the leyline armor that they brought out, you had to get every single piece before you actually complete that collection. If you wanted an armor skin, an outfit, and it was on the gem store, you just buy that, you unlock light, medium, and heavy, and you, pretty much the same, but you also unlock it for every single race out there. And that is something, again, it's pretty good to get that straight away. I remember one of the outfits that I'd bought was the wedding outfit, and I found it really interesting that each particular race had a very different wedding outfit. It's actually the only full outfit I've bought on the trading post, because I did like that. But what about you, Joe? Have you actually bought any outfits on the trading post?
I have, actually. Let me pull up my outfit list here. I bought pretty much a handful of them.
Okay, and why did you buy those outfits?
Okay, so a few of them actually were converted from when I actually got them earlier on in the game, like the town set outfits or whatever that they had. However, I got the Crystal Nomad, the free one that we got, the Royal
Yeah, the Royal Guard.
Royal Guard outfit. Yep, that's pretty cool. That one's free. again, that's something that they did free, and it's possible. The witch's outfit, and then they have the noble count outfit, the ceremonial plated outfit.
Yeah, that one's a good one. I was tempted to get that one.
Yeah, and then I have the lunatic guard, which was from the more recent Halloween update.
And the noble one's quite nice as well.
Yeah, I do like the noble count one.
But okay, so let me ask you this: why are you buying all these outfits when they're gems? You know, wouldn't you rather just earn these items in game?
Yes, I would. I mean, I can see that as someone who spent lots of money in League of Legends. I am willing
Yeah.
to pay money to a game or developers that are doing something that us as consumers can appreciate and support.
And that's the fundamental basis, the supply and demand. Now, ArenaNet, again, these types of skins don't take too much work for them to put it into the gem store. And again, it's getting things out there that players actually want or may want. And, maybe after a certain amount of time, would it be interesting to see maybe an outfit be acquired in-game, perhaps, after a 2-year period has gone by? Maybe that's something that could happen, but I think for the moment, as much as I can say both. This my personal opinion is actually differing to what I'm talking here, but we wanted to give you guys a balanced opinion on this. ArenaNet produce content, and they have a department specifically doing the design, focused on design. And I like the fact that every week or so, new items come into the game, and it shows that the game's still active. And the alternative may be that they could create a handful of armor outfits, but it doesn't come in every week. They come in 6 months or 9 months down the line. Is that again? You're not comfortable with a content drought as it is, Joe, but are you at least that way you can see? And again, you can see it from a business point of view. They're making money on this because people will buy gems to buy the outfits that people really, really want, and that is the whole point. That is their business model. You can't argue against the ArenaNet's business model, can you?
No, and at the same time, it's like they do have good incentives, and at the same time, they have good ideas, and I think they're just kind of implementing it all wrong at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I can see a lot of good in their development processes and their releases and everything. And their team is generally they're very good people. They have a good time. They love what they do. I just think that they're a little lost right now with a lot of their ideas. And I think their implementation is sorely something that they need to work on. However, with the way the time frame that they're releasing these outfits and the skins and all that jazz, it's pretty much like we're sitting here waiting for them to release new content in general. But what we see is in the patch notes is a paragraph of skins and gem store releases that.
Yeah, and I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I think I would agree that is somewhat annoying that when you do see the patch notes, you do get all these gem store upgrades. I think they could take those if they take the gem store upgrades out of the patch notes, maybe it's something more beneficial. Maybe they could do the gem store update on a Wednesday, for example. Just something that it means that it kind of adds Wednesday is a special day. But again, as someone that I see a lot of glider skins available, like the Macaw items or the sort of the white wings, the black wings. I don't really want. They're not of interest to me, but I don't have a problem with them being in the gem store. I mean, the back pieces again are very cosmetic. So what about those in the gem store? We've talked about the outfits, but what about glider skins and backpacks? Are that a big issue being in the gem store?
No, it's not. But again, it has to do with the consistency at which they're being released and the consistency that we're not seeing other items of content being released. Here's an idea though that I kind of just coined up a little bit while ago. What if they had a way to implement the skins that they released in the game into the actual game itself as incentives to play the game. So consider the fact that maybe you've finished some really hard objective, or finished a raid, or even like as a daily login thing. Like maybe for instead of the loyalty chest for the final reward for a monthly login thing, what if they implemented a way that you could like spin a wheel and have a chance to get one of the skins, or maybe even select a skin that you'd like?
Percent. I could even say something, for thinking from an ArenaNet financial point of view, maybe if you want you could actually, for a monthly reward, you could select one of your outfits to be converted into individual armor items. That way you could mix and match them. But
Sure.
you can only do it from the items that you actually already have.
That'd be a way around it, and I can see that.
People might be more tempted to buy more outfits. I'm just saying. I think we've had a good argument on the gem store. Let's move on to a more controversial topic right now, and that is to do with ArenaNet's recent, or should we say lack of recent, information regarding upcoming developments regarding their game. Now, for those of you who were back at the beginning, and for those of you who weren't didn't play Guild Wars 2 from the start, prior to Guild Wars 2's launch, there was a lot of information. Now, Joe, as well, you were we didn't know each other back then, but I'm assuming you were keeping abreast of all the things that were going on. All the, for example, when they released each individual profession. Do you remember those days?
I do, and they did a really good job of actually releasing it at a decent time, and a good chunk of information. Like, I was really excited to know every few weeks of the new professions that they were going to be releasing in the game, and it was something. It was hype, and it was like it was able to really implement their ideas and their direction of the game into the community, get some feedback, and increase hype and marketing, just through talking about their new classes that they're going to be releasing for the game.
Yeah, and the fact they also showed off some of their skills, like the weird little video clips.
Yep, and those are actually really cool. And they actually did the similar thing with the release of Heart of Thorns with the elite classes, the elite specializations.
Only three of them though. They stopped it. They did stop it. They only did the first three, which was kind of, they did Mesmer, Dragon Hunter, and what was the third one? Was it Druid?
It was Druid, yes.
Yeah, and then they stopped it, which was really disappointing. And so where we're going, people who are listening in, why we're talking about this is because since the change of management, the news coming out of ArenaNet has run very, very dry. Now, there has been a recent article on MMORPG.com, which again talked about this and said, well, look, from a customer review, sort of customer relations point of view and a PR point of view, when in the world has a customer said less communication is better? People always want to hear from their, from their people that they're loyal to, the brands, for example. And, again, people may say, well, you may expect to have a certain degree of communication. Is that, are you entitled to this certain amount of information? Well, as a customer and a player, I feel I am entitled to information about how the game's going. And an interesting thing that came out of this, Bobby Stein, one of the writers, actually mentioned that Raidwing 2, I think Raidwing 1 or 3, actually was delayed. It actually should have came out sooner, but was delayed. And they didn't tell anybody this because not only does it create an added pressure on the developers, but it also meant there wasn't as much outrage from the community that the fact that things were delayed. So I'm going to ask you, Joe, What's your take on ArenaNet's sort of change in focus from being very open, doing like, for example, on Guild Chat every week, every Friday, it was always something to look forward to because they had news they were going to bring released. You know, regularly you'd have over 2,000 people watching that stream on a Friday. Now on Guild Chat, you barely get over 500 because they're never ever talking about anything new coming out into the game. Well, what's your take on this particular topic?
Again, there was a lot that I applauded them for, just a little bit before the release of Heart of Thorns, and a few months kind of during the management shift. Like for instance, I know that everyone who's followed our podcasts in general, they they have been kind of really stingy about the way that they talk about new releases in general, and I think that they need to definitely pick up the slack that needs to be around the hype that they're working on in terms of like just general content. I mean, they don't need to like release the official details bit by bit. I think they definitely need to just kind of give a general idea as what they're working on. That again, like I said, as I said before, something that works within the realm of possibility of their gameplay mechanics and in their engine that works. Like they can be like, okay, this is what we're working on, and this is pretty much what it's going to be, and I could expect that. And if we expect anything more than that, then shame on me for overhyping it or whatever. However, that gets me excited for content that's going to be released. And lately, at least since the management shift, at first Mo was seemed very hopeful about the way things were going, considering they had consistent blog posts about shifts and changes with the game and how they were going to be progressing with it and everything. And it seemed like a fresher breath of fresh air, and I think that really helped for a little bit.
Yeah, like the Ask Me Anything on Reddit.
Correct. Yeah, it was that time period that I felt that they did well. They released that, and then they did some live streams, and as well as just they talked about a lot of their content and stuff. However, it wasn't that long after that in which they kind of fell under the bus again, in which they just kind of stopped talking. And they've done this in the past, where they just kind of, they're like, oh, I guess we're fine now. We're just going to shift everything to development. It's like, it's like their teams, the development team in general, just overall for Guild Wars 2, just has no ability to multitask at all. Like literally zero. It's like they say they have certain teams doing other things, but we never ever see anything ever released within those teams, like ever. And it's like, what is going on? Why did this management shift happen if nothing has changed? And even if things did change a little bit, it's lesser than what it would have regardless. Because I feel like if Colin was still in the helm, if he wasn't going around driving trains right now somewhere in the world, I think that we would be hearing a lot more hype and a lot more talk. And I think that even if some of the things that he would talk about wouldn't pay off, I feel like a few things not paying off is better than not knowing anything and just kind of blindly walking around the dark, hoping to see a light or a shed of hope for content in the future.
Yeah, and this is also an issue that we've got this. Everyone's talking about the content drought. As a content creator, it's very difficult to come up with news or items that when there is nothing. I always mention it that recently, look at Wooden Potatoes, a man that up until about a month ago, every single day that there was a Guild Wars 2 video, and because there's not much to talk about, well, how can you create a video when there's nothing to talk about? What we're going to do, me and Joe are going to come up, and we'd like your thoughts as well, how ArenaNet could change some of their the way that they communicate with you, maybe to what any suggestions. But I want to take a step back and actually explain what an example of PR and why this, as someone who actually has worked in PR, I have an understanding of this, and I go back to when they made the announcement about legendary weapons and the fact that they were cancelling all but one of the new legendary weapons. This was a huge announcement, and people went ballistic. I can imagine, Joe, you weren't too happy either, were you?
No, and even as someone who doesn't really like progressively act towards a legendary weapon, the fact that this was around the time that I was hearing about the new legendary weapon. You know that they literally released it like I think the
Yeah.
same day. It's
Well,
like they're like
yeah,
here. I mean, they didn't release it, but they talked about the details and they released like what it was looking like and like
yeah.
the kind of the
Well,
initial venture of it
hmm.
all.
Well, what I want to talk about and say from a PR point of view, I would not have done this. And you know, you can say that this was a massive reaction. You could say, well, they brought it out in the open. You can respect them for that, but it was a bit of a mistake. But then that was not the only mistake that they made in that particular time frame, because when we had the spring release, which was April 2016, we got some phenomenal content coming in, very unexpected things, and it was very overwhelming. And a lot of players were like, "Wow, wow, wow! Okay, what the hell's going on? Where's this? What the hell is this? I didn't know about this. Why haven't they get what? There are items people had no idea were coming in, and they could have buried the fact that legendary weapons weren't they were going to cut that out with all the stuff that came in. Now you may say that that's a kind of a cynical point of view, and that may have been a way of spinning it and burying the news. Yes, I agree, but from a PR point of view, that's the way things work. You want to maximize, you want to minimize, the effect that it's going to have on your community. And why do I think that this was a mistake? The fact that although the spring release was a phenomenal amount of stuff that we got in, why am I saying that it was a bit of a bad PR in terms of the information we got? Just to remind you what we got in the spring release. We got changes to the Heart of Thorn maps, so you didn't have to have that participation going on, so you got more items easier. You got a account-bound inventory slot, as well as a level 80 boost if you own Heart of Thorns. The legendary shortbow was released. The legendary fractal back item was released. They increased dungeon rewards back to kind of similar levels to what they used to be. They altered fractals in the mists so that the dailies were much more easier. It wasn't just Swamp of the Mists. The Looking for Group update got a massive update, made it a lot more easier. It's so much smoother now. World vs. World had a new armor set. They had reward tracks. They had this Provisions Master added. You had the raid lobby, the Lion's Arch Aerodrome added. They changed daily achievements to add some Heart of Thorns specific dailies. They changed the Spirit Watch and Skyhammer PvP maps to both being, in my opinion, far, far better maps to what they used to be. They made changes to scribing, so they made it a lot easier to get and to level up. And they did a huge amount of this, and a lot of this was fantastic changes. But why was this bad in terms of PR? Because they didn't tell us any of these changes. They didn't do they could have done a week's worth of blog posts talking about these. Imagine one day you find out you're going to get a raid lobby. The next day you're going to find out about the Looking for Group update. The next day you're getting PvP map changes. The next day World versus World changes. The day after that, you've got Fractal legendary backpiece coming in and the Fractal the Mists polish. Then, not only that, you've got the dungeons getting boosted back up to, increased financial rewards, more tokens. Doing 8 unique dungeon paths get you 5 gold and 150 tokens from your choice. And then, for me, which was probably the biggest thing, getting an account-bound inventory, shared inventory slot, and a instant level 80. They could have announced that, as well as the legendary short bow, and then said, although that we've managed to do all this, One downside is that we are going to focus on the living world, and so unfortunately this is going to be the last legendary item that we're going to have introduced for the foreseeable future in terms of weapons. And people will be disappointed, but they'd have all this other stuff, and they wouldn't be as pissed off. And that is where I wanted to say that, from PR point of view, ArenaNet are struggling, and I do feel that the PR department, whether it's from a senior management point of view, but I do think from a PR point of view, in terms of making sure that the player base is happy, they've been a bit slack, and that's where this lack of information comes from. Now, Joe, I've talked for a long time on that point. Have you got anything that you want to add to what I've just said here?
No, I mean, you pretty much, again, hit the nail on the head. They need to bring out the good news first, opposed to, releasing at the same time as the bad news. Like for instance, you see governments do this with laws and Congress doing this with passing laws and stuff. Like they wait until there's something really big and nice and shiny in front of our faces to release something under our noses.
Yeah.
And I know it's not exactly the most honest thing to do or the nicest thing to do a lot of the time. However, in these cases, I feel like it would lighten up the load for the community. They would have all this new content to look over and be happy about. And then there's this minor part. Oh no, we're not going to be able to get this weapon that I could probably get in the future. And that's really sad. But look at all this new content, that we're able to get. And it's just the way that they went about it was just all wrong. And I feel like, again, like the PR team or the senior management or whatever, they need to get their stuff together, and they need to figure out how to actually talk about what they're releasing or what they're planning on releasing in a way that isn't going to hinder their development time, or prevent them from not delivering on what they were working on.
Yeah,
because
and excite. Well, I was going to say excite the player base.
There you go, and that's literally all they need to do. And I just feel like they, as again I was saying before, I just feel like they can't multitask. Like literally everyone, I feel like even their PR team is probably working on some type of development thing that they shouldn't be, and they're just, or maybe they're all sleeping or something. I don't know. They just need to need to get their act together.
All right, let me ask you this: what would you like to see from ArenaNet to improve communication? Would you like to see the blog posts come back where they talk about development? Would you perhaps like to see maybe an informal Twitch stream where the developers would be saying, look, Living World Season 3, provisionally we're looking at between, they give a time frame between July and September. And you say, look, we hope to get it out as soon as possible, but we may need to push it back if we identify some bugs, because we don't want to, there will be bugs when they release it, but we want to minimize that. And so they say, look, we'll be honest, this is the time frame we've got. We're hoping to hit it, but, bear with us. Would that be something that the community, let's flip it, and say, look, you may actually like that, but what about the community effect it has on a whole? Because if you say this information, how will it be taken?
It would be taken either in a positive light or a negative light based upon who you're talking to, I suppose, who's reading it. However, there's ways that they can actually implement all of this. They could release it in a state that's not maybe 100% complete. You see this a lot with like early development developers, like indie developers on like Kickstarter, and then Steam Greenlight. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They release this stuff in a state that they're able to kind of get their vision across, their idea across, but they always say stuff like, well, I shouldn't say always, but the good developers always say stuff like, this is a work in progress. We appreciate your feedback. We need your feedback, and that's what we need. However, it will be a work in progress. What I think that they need to do is to release a beta test realm and implement their new changes, their new ideas into that realm. And get the feedback or get the community involved, even if it's smaller stuff, because there's people out there who enjoy and love the game so much that they're willing to sit there for hours on end and test that change in damage buff or whatever, that like the minor changes, like the really minor changes. They're willing to do that.
But let's also take a look at this from a gameplay point of view as well as sort of being in the news. So I'm on MMO RPG.com, and what it has obviously they have lots and lots of articles on many MMOs, and in the last year, the number one new item that had the most hits on their articles was Black Desert Online. No surprise considering it was a brand new release. Number 2 was Guild Wars 2. That's in the past 12 months, and that's obviously we're going to say because we had obviously the launch of Heart of Thorns, and then you go down the list. You've got Elder Scrolls Online, World of Warcraft, Trove, Blade and Soul, WildStar, Skyforge, etc. But then we move and we go into the last 6 months. Now the last 6 months is January to July, so that was obviously after the Heart of Thorns launch. So where does Guild Wars 2 feature in the last 6 months in terms of people reading articles on the MMORPG website? It actually moves down to number 5, and that's a pretty big drop. It drops below Blade and Soul, below Elder Scrolls Online, below Trove, only slightly above World of Warcraft. And that's where you got to see a few other ones, things like The Division was on the rise. Well, let's look at the last month, and let's see where Guild Wars 2 is on that front. It's at number 7, and it's just falling. So basically because there's been a lack of news in the community, MMORPG have nothing to report on. So therefore, the game isn't as aware in the community's mind. Maybe if you're a casual player, you look on this RPG website and you think, okay, well, what's going on in the community? What's going on with Guild Wars 2? Nothing. Okay, I'm not going to really focus on that. Let's look at another game. Oh, look, Eternal Chaos Online. That's a new game. Let's have a look at that. And so Guild Wars 2, from a PR point of view, has to keep coming up with news to keep the game in the mindset and awareness of the player base. And then let's look at the past week. Guild Wars 2 is down to number 8. And it's dropping. And it's only slightly above Heroes of the Storm. And this is pretty dire for a game that I love this game. And I want Guild Wars 2 to be one of the most talked about games out there. And it's struggling to do that. And the reason being, there's not anything coming out that we can talk about. Joe, you got any thoughts on this?
No, I think that you pretty much summed up a lot of my thoughts. They need to release content in a time, or not content, but just news, just hype in a timely manner that keeps the game relevant. And they have not been doing that at all. And if you look at the subreddits on Reddit for Guild Wars 2, you can see the community just dropping significly, like every day. I'm not sure about subscribers, because I think that there's a lot of people who stay subscribed to the subreddit itself just in case they announce that new expansion pack, or just in case they decide to talk about something really big. Then they come back and they delve into it all. However, the way that they release their content in general just is not good. They should have a constant stream of news to keep people interested. And you should see a consistent, if you're looking at a chart, you should have a consistent rise, or at least a stream of hype. And
I was going to say, me and Arctic talked about it on the last podcast, whereby with Leaving World Season 2, it was every 2 weeks they released a new episode for the most part, and in the interluding week they released a preview video. So every week you were getting something new from Guild Wars 2. It kept people in the mindset. Now, I'm not saying that it was always brilliant, but I'm saying from a PR perspective, it was very, very good, because every week people were talking about it in terms of the next patch, or the patch that's just being released. And that's something that they unfortunately really have struggled to replicate since they announced, January 2015 when they finished season 2. They've not been able to keep up, apart from maybe with the Heart of Thorns hype, with regular posts about upcoming changes and upcoming content. Well, I think we've talked a lot about the PR side. Let's talk about something a little bit more positive and something more fun and something more interesting, and that is raid lore. So as you can see here, this is me, and I'm just going to again zoom out. So here I am. I'm in the current raid wing 3. This is Stronghold of the Faithful, here with Joe, and we are in this raid now. Those of you who've not played the raid, I can understand this. I'm not going to go into any reasons why, but what we're here to do is to give you an update and talk about what we've found out in the raid, a little bit of a backstory to what's going on. So what we're going to do, Glenna is this NPC that follows you in all 3 raids, and she has this field journal, which is kind of an update over what's going on currently. So she gives you an update on Spirit Vale, Salvation Pass, the 2 past raids, and we're going to go through briefly. So when we come to Spirit Vale, that was the first boss. This is Glenna talking about after Modromoth's death, she detected magical anomalies in northern Maguma. A windstorm or shockwave were reports that were passed between Priory scholars, so that's why she came up here. She came across the camp of Pact soldiers, and some of them have been kidnapped by bandits. So we then came across, that was the very, very first boss, that is the Veiled Guardian. Several odd structures, a massive man-made wall, which is to the left of the Raid Wing 1, and a trio of pylons with strange inscriptions. Now that's firstly interesting, strange inscriptions. What are these hearkening back to? Maybe, because of what we learned in Raid Wing 3, perhaps maybe these inscriptions were anything from the Massats. We'll have to see, but we'll come on to that a bit later. These are glowing beings, and a magical barrier prevented all prior rescue attempts. So she did their best to comfort the remaining soldiers because they'd lost a lot of their friends. And then hearing the accounts of these battered soldiers angered her because the Pact had just won a major victory against Modromoth, and she wanted retribution. So she was powerless, though, against the dangers of the jungle, so she waited for someone to come to their aid. Thankfully, a group of mercenaries, that is us, because we can't have 10 commanders, and we pressed forth into the danger. So we killed the Veiled Guardian and its accomplices, and we destroyed the pylons, and we forged deeper, vanquishing angry, displaced spirits. So these spirits, were stopped in their tracks by a huge beast. This was Gorseval. But this huge beast was made of frightened, vengeful souls who she'd later find out were shocked free from the Maguma Bloodstone. So this is clear evidence, so those of you who played Guild Wars 1, the Maguma Bloodstone in which we played and the White Mantle was sacrificing people on, these people were in Guild Wars 1, the White Mantle would use a device called the Eye of Janthir to find people with high magical ability. They would then take them and sacrifice them on the Bloodstone and to steal their souls. And so they ripped the souls, and these souls sought revenge. And we killed Gorseval, and then we confronted Sabathar. This wasn't a simple bandit encampment, so this was the outer defenses of a jungle stronghold. So there were dark secrets and sinister rituals waiting to be discovered. Anything you want to talk about there, Joe?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, a lot of this stuff has already been covered in a lot of earlier stuff around the time of the release. Mm-hmm. But it's I really like the amount of detail that they've gone into this first Ray Wing opposed to their later Ray Wings.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I don't know. I mean, it is kind of set in a premise of it all. However, I do like the immersion that they've got here.
Yeah, so let's move on to the second part. This is Salvation Pass. And so this is something that's kind of interesting. So after the events at Spirit Vale, she set up shop in a cave, and that's when she heard about a terrible commotion through the Twisting Cave. And she found us handily defeated Slothazar and his slublings. But a strange current of residual magic emanated from the giant sloth's lifeless body, lending substance to the theory that it was mutated as a result of Modromoth's death. So this is an interesting line because it's saying that, we've killed 2 Elder Dragons, and all this energy, all this magic that should have been absorbed by these massive beings are now, this magic's running wild, and it's having an effect on Tyria. It's having an effect on random beings, such as a sloth. It's changed him, and if you think back when we killed Zaitan, well, we then got an update. Well, it was an update, but Tequatl suddenly evolved. This is a sign that magic, when it's released, when it's not contained, has the ability to change beings. So this is one of the first times we're seeing that our actions may, in, sort of from an ideological point of view, are very, very good, defeating the Elder Dragons, but from a wider standpoint, it's actually having an adverse effect on most of Tyria. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
I mean, again, it's pretty straightforward, but I do like the thought that all of this cause and effect stuff going on is really it's really engaging for theory crafters. I like the idea of maybe not all these bad guys who are being affected by this ley line effects, but maybe some good people are too on our side. So maybe we'll see some heroes or allies getting some really cool boosts in their magic and abilities in the future.
That'd be cool. And then Glenna goes on to say she came across the bandit camp, but she'd also found evidence of bodies being burned, bodies being chucked off cliffs. We've rescued some prisoners. So yeah, not some pretty gruesome stuff. The absence of life was overpowering. Dead peasants, bandits, and even lifeless Mordrum vines. So this is clear evidence that we've killed Mordrum off, because all these vines that were making their way through the world are now dead. They're lifeless. Then she talks about the area appeared to be a vacated work camp. Most curious was a broken Asura gate. This is clear evidence that we actually get it's linked to the core game of Guild Wars 2, and particularly the Brisbane Wildlands. Because it says here, what was it doing here? Why was it attuned to Brisbane Wildlands? What's the connection to the bandits out there? And the bandits out there are part of a group, and Joe, do you know what they're called?
Oh, the White Mantle?
No. Well, they are called the White Mantle, but the bandits in the Brisbane Wildlands, that's part of that the trio, that tribe sort of alliance, where you've got the Inquest and also the Nightmare Court are teaming up with bandits. I believe it's the Nightmare Court.
Oh, okay.
Is that correct?
I think you're right, yeah.
And so they're teamed up together. And so that's an interesting idea that the White Mantle then, who the bandits are, they're working with the Asura, obviously in terms of the Inquest, the sort of very immoral type people. And then you've got the Nightmare Court. So that alliance working together, maybe they must have known about, like, perhaps they're working, towards in thinking about the Massart. A lot of people suggest that maybe the Inquest came about from Asura that came from Ratanovus, because they obviously knew about Prime Mortis. There's so much to talk about and sort of speculate, and we're not going to go into that. But it's interesting about the link between Brisbane Wildlands and the White Mantle, and it's fully confirmed here.
Right.
And so that's why you can make that intriguing between the band, because they're aligned with the White Mantle and the Inquest, why you can see there's an alliance, to do with the Massart. So it said she met a man called Bennett. He's a person we rescue, and the final boss called Matthias in Wing 2. And you find out a lot about Bennett, but generally you'll just find out he was willing to sacrifice himself so that his crew would survive, or his squad would survive. And then basically what it says is that he was going to be sacrificed in a ritual where his soul would be taken from him and ripped from him and infused into bloodstone shards. Now, bloodstone shards, all the activity surrounding the Maguma Bloodstone has Glenna concerned. for centuries, it says decades, maybe even centuries, of human sacrifice have imbued that bloodstone with souls, and fragments have been mined from it. So this is clear evidence that they have basically been chipping off parts of the bloodstone, and that the White Mantle are using it. So with Mordramoth's death, there is an abundance of magical energy in and around the bloodstone, and that any physical object could contain such power is terrifying, especially if wielded by the irresponsible. Now, the bloodstone, for those of you who were unaware, what happened, tens of thousands of years ago, five big, magical and powerful races put their magic, they all combined together and they infused their magic into this bloodstone. And it was a much bigger bloodstone back then. And so the Elder Dragons couldn't feast anymore on magic, and so they slept. And so the five races survived. And what that meant, therefore, was that the magic contained in these bloodstones is pretty powerful. And so now, the fact that you've got these powerful bloodstones of magic, with the White Mantles sacrificing souls into them for centuries, maybe that's made them even more powerful. And now you've got Mordramoth's death, with ley magic running wild, potentially making these bloodstones even more powerful. Yeah, very interesting indeed. Joe, any speculation on that front?
Again, not a whole lot. I'd like to really just take it to the fact that the possibilities are pretty much, I don't want to say endless, but there are a lot of possibilities and theories that we could go about the direction of all this. But I think that the direction that they're going right now with all this is very exciting. Very exciting.
Yes. And as she goes on to say, we've witnessed with Matthias, what happens is during the fight, Matthias explodes into this abomination with bloodstone shards coming out of him. So great concentrations of magic are hard to control and often lead to unpredictable results. So has anyone stopped to think what all this tampering may lead to? Very interesting, the fact that with the all this magic flowing around, if someone takes control of it, maybe they'll end up doing something pretty drastic and dramatic that will have an adverse effect on Tyria. Then we come to magical research. This is day one. This is where she talks about I think it's believed we're talking about the Veiled Guardian. Would you agree with that on Joe?
Yes.
So she says, encountered an anomaly near the packed camp. From a distance, it resembles a heat shimmer or a sun glare. On approach, however, it changes shape if the light surrounding it is bending inward. Day two. If I listen carefully, it seems to emit a faint, almost unnatural sound. I plan to throw a rock at the formation to elicit a response. Test complete. I'm not dead. The rock passed through it unaffected. No explosions detected. Tomorrow I'll begin a battery of attunement tests to see if I can provoke a reaction. Day 4. Initial tests are yielding promising results. I've deducted that this anomaly is like a window to other places. If I concentrate hard enough, I can see glimpses of figures through the mist. Now this is fascinating. So this goes way back to the fractal that we had, which was the former Nova reactor fractal, whereby you fight a boss at the end called the Anomaly. And a lot of people have always wondered, well, what is this anomaly? Why is he up here? And it's a result of the explosion that takes place because of the reactor being on leyline energy and leyline rifts. And we then meet another anomaly in the Veiled Guardian, and she's saying that she can actually see through this anomaly to figures through the mist. We then have got things going on in the current events whereby we've seen characters investigating these ley energy suddenly disappear, and then we get anomalies running away and sort of cowering, and we actually attack them and destroy them. Is it that these anomalies are actually beings? Are they creatures, sort of Char, humans, Norn, etc., and that somehow they've been displaced and they're in this sort of non-realm, and that they're trying to come back, and the way that they form this anomaly, and we can't tell what they are, but maybe that when they become back and they're not fully formed, they're just terrified, because wouldn't you be if you came back and you're not yourself, you're this glowing energy thing? And it's very interesting to see when we're going to find out what these anomalies actually are, and if we can actually have, if we can actually meet beings through the mist. Maybe we can actually meet figures from the past that have been killed but are now in the mists and are part of this anomaly. Well, that would be that would throw up a big base of speculation to try and meet some figures and bring back some interesting characters back to the game. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, extremely. Like I don't know if they should go about that route, because then theoretically they could go anywhere and just bring them back, if they wanted to, and that would be interesting to see, like that kind of revenge story going on. However, I don't think that'd be a good way. I think they should progress on, make their deaths more meaningful, give what they're fighting for more meaning, and progress forward to save others, opposed to saving what was or what could have been. However, the idea that they're able to maybe just time travel in the past and just get answers to a lot of questions and progress the story through that way, that is really exciting.
Yeah, maybe. Just think about, God, I'd love to see some of the characters they could, even like you could go back to potentially and see Scarlet again, for example.
Exactly, and it's things like that that would be really exciting, or maybe even have some type of connection to the Masart.
Yes.
Maybe into their realm. Maybe that's what we're seeing. That
could
true. Be a possibility.
Very, very true. Because for those of you again unsure about the Masart, they went into a different dimension, I guess you call it, and hid from the Elder Dragons. And potentially Joe suggesting maybe that's where a lot of people have actually slipped to. Maybe it's another realm that they're hidden from and are trying to get back. Really good idea.
Yep. Or maybe even maybe these aren't people trying to get into it, but maybe it's the Elder Dragons or whatever this power is trying to get at them in that actual realm.
Yes.
There's lots of different theories that could delve into.
Yes, so we'd like to hear your thoughts on this, guys. I hope that for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to play the raid and to actually examine the lore, this has been a nice little catch-up to know what's going on and to see how it relates to the in-game events and sort of what's been going, and to see the situation. Because ArenaNet have said that this isn't going to be affecting, sort of what's going on in terms of the wider world. But I also feel it's nice to get the complete story. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Now if you hadn't had the opportunity to catch up on the lore, maybe now it's giving you some further thoughts and ideas as to what's going on in the world right now, where it will lead to Living World Season 3. Please leave in any comments you've got regarding ideas about where the story could go and what some of the lore ideas you might have. If you've got any comments about the gem store, it'd be great to hear you talk about that, and to say if you've got any opinions on that one way or the other. It'd be great to hear that. And also about the PR side, do you feel that ArenaNet need to improve their public relations in terms of communication, or do you feel that they're between a rock and a hard place and they're damned if they do and damned if they don't? It'd be great to hear your thoughts on that. Please leave your message in the comment section below, and me and Joe will try and respond to those. And again, if anybody's interested in being on a podcast, feel free to leave a message. I'd love to have some interesting views and to see other people's discussions, maybe someone who has a different perspective from Guild Wars 2. So thank you very much for my guest, Joe. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
And we'll see you on the next one. So thanks for watching. Raids, PvP, legendary weapons, how to make gold in Guild Wars 2, and Mikei Talk. Please use these links below to help support my channel, and I'll keep producing content you enjoy.